Perspectives, Finding Common Ground, a podcast series that brings together a panel of thought leader perspectives as a forum to socialize and problem solve education technology issues with the goal to ultimately find common ground.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Perspectives, Finding Common Ground. I'm Patrick Devaney, and I have some wonderful guests to join the conversation today. We're going to be talking about keeping digital learning communities safe. In essence, we're in a digital world, and classrooms today are essential. Digital tools are essential for learning, but they also present some new challenges. So how do schools and families and communities work together to create safe digital learning environments? So we're going to start today with our guests. I'm going to go around the horn and let them introduce themselves. I think it's going to be a fabulous panel. And I think we'll start with you, Sophia, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the invitation, and I'm excited to have this great conversation. So over the last almost 30 plus years, I have been leading, and I like to say learning, in the nation's second largest school district, Los Angeles Unified, wearing many different hats. I think that's the great thing about being in a large school system, that you can try on many different hats. I've worn the hat of student, teacher, assistant principal, the last 11 years leading instructional technology. And now I get to be a principal all again, going back to my roots. But another hat that I wear, and I wear it very proudly, is that I am an ISTE ASCD board member for the last 5 years. So I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic, Sophia. So good to have you here, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts today. You got great experience. Next, Diane, I think we'll have you introduce yourself, please.
Well, hi, everybody. Good to see you all. I'm Diane Dersch, and I serve as the Senior Director of Information Technology for Digital Promise. So Digital Promise supports education, schools, districts, and we focus on innovation, equity, and also, working toward building systems that are going to make a difference for now and in the future. I'm a former Chief Technology and Information Officer for a larger school district in Wisconsin, and before that, Director of Technology and a teacher as well. But I'm coming to the role in this perspective as leader who leads technology within organizations that support all of you out there. And so I look forward to this conversation as we move forward.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. And Christina, last but certainly not least, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. My name is Christina O'Brien, and I am the lead curriculum designer for Parent ProTech, which is a company that builds online resources for both parents and for schools, centered around helping kids make critical decisions online. So making sure that they pause and think before they click or hit post or whatever it is that they're going to be doing. And of course, I have a background in education as well. So classroom teacher, interventionist at risk eventually, and then instructional technology. So a little bit of everything around there too, those multiple hats, like Sophia said.
Fantastic. Well, this is going to be exciting, and I thank you all for joining us. Why don't we start by kind of setting the foundation a little? And let's talk a little bit about what we mean by digital tool safety. What is it? What do you look at from your role? And what do you see some of the biggest concerns are for safety in using these tools in education today? And I'm not going to do this every time, but I'm going to start with one today. Sophia, you're right in the building these days. So why don't we start with you, please?
Great. I think what's really top of mind for right now is I'm thinking about parents. What type of questions are parents going to be asking? What's top of mind for our parents? How can we ensure that parents have the just-in-time answers for all of the questions that they may be thinking about? Just this afternoon, I met one of our new 4-year-olds, and he came in with the tablet, super excited, showing me everything he can do. And I asked him, do you know about Minecraft? Oh, yeah, he told me all about Minecraft, and his mom was right there. And then she started asking me questions, tell me more about the program you utilize here with Minecraft. So one thing I want to make sure is that we empower parents to ask the right questions, but also making sure that our educators are prepared to really show how we are utilizing all of the amazing digital tools that we have in a very instructionally focused way that brings joy to our students. Because that little 4-year-old, when I told him Minecraft, he just sparked up. So that's what's really top of mind right now for me are our parents. How are we equipping our parents to be knowledgeable in this digital age?
Great. Christina, maybe you can add that with your focus on parents.
Yeah, that's really kind of what we're all about and what a lot of my focus is on the day to day. It's a community approach whenever it comes to keeping kids safe online, and parents are a big part of that community for us. So I focus a lot on building resources that kind of meet the parent where they are. So whether it's they are just now learning what Minecraft is or what Roblox is, then we really need to be able to introduce those topics and talk about them in a way that highlights the positive and the not so positive around it, but also that gives the parents the resources to have those discussions. So some of the things that I think are vitally important for schools is being able to provide things like conversation starters or regular information. I know our platform focuses mostly on video resources, even down to walking through the protection settings. So we try to put those resources out there for schools and support them so that they have the answers to pass over to parents. And then, of course, we take all of that and put it over on the teacher side too. As Sophia said, the teachers are being asked these questions and they may not know the answers. So kind of having that community approach and really focusing on educating parents, but also having the resources and materials and all of that stuff for educators too, because we're getting those questions every day as well.
Yeah, sure. Diane, anything to add?
Well, I come from the boring land here because, we're talking on the screen, our practitioners who are working with students, working with parents, and from a lens of an edtech leader, we're kind of the in for the applications that come to our organization. We get requests from our fine people, our staff, to be using a digital resource that they would like to use in support of a school district. We want to hold ourselves to the same accountabilities and the same vetting processes that school districts are using to ensure that, we are using resources that are safe. And so, sounds Boresville, but, I take a look at COPA and FERPA and state laws. I check terms of service. I check privacy policies. We've got a team. We work collaboratively on this. We find out the use case, how our staff members going to be using this, what information is coming in, and will be part of this application. If it's web-based, our students involved. Sometimes we're supporting school districts, and so students might be involved with that. Then, FERPA is something we definitely need to pay attention to, understand where the data is, who's possessing it, and all those types of things, and what kind of notifications are taking place with the parents so that they know what their students are using. So it gets complicated because, I ask companies, what are your breach protocols? I ask, can I see your SOC 2 reports? All these technical things that school districts expect be in place. And I have to say, I'm really happy. 10 years ago, I was educating vendors on what FERPA was, right? They've come a long way. And so I'm happy for that, but we still need to make sure that the companies have practices and procedures and standard things that they do that keep data safe. And so those are the main things I do even before an application is purchased. Now, with the advent of AI, we're finding that even current apps that we have used, we vetted, AI is being added onto them, right? And so now this is a start back at go and start revetting apps again, taking a look at the AI capabilities, asking what large language model they're using, asking about how they're using that, etc. So again, I feel like a department like mine is the kind that Sophia and Christina's, people depend on for us to do diligence so that our students can stay safe.
So it sounds like quite a process to select the apps. From where I sit, I know there are thousands of apps that are out there, and I don't envy people that are, in the on the front line, so to speak, in terms of selecting those apps. Diane just described that she offers with her organization with digital prompt, lots of options or lots of insight into those. But what does the selection process look like? And who should be involved? And kind of what are the non-negotiables and what are the things to look for? I don't know if anybody wants to start off. Please go ahead.
Yes. One of my non-negotiables is, does this application have the ISTE seal? Right. So really thinking about, has this application, gone through the process that it's evidence-based and research-based back, right? Anybody can lift up an app and put the app in the App Store or in a Play Store, but has it really gone through the rigor to make sure that it's aligning to instructional practices? I'm thinking about our educators. Are our educators like, okay, thank you, whoever decided this is going to be the app for us, but is it really aligned to the outcomes that we want to see? So for me, that's a non-negotiable. About 2 years ago, we launched a request for proposal. We were the first district to put on the request for proposal the ISTE seal. We're looking for that ISTE seal. And I believe this last go around too, it was also mentioned on there. So we're asking our product to make sure that they're raising their game on what they are putting out there for our educators and for our students. It's, again, non-negotiable for me is that ISTE seal.
Great.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that Diana and Sophie even alluded to it a little bit, the idea of use case. Even in my experience in education, I've seen educators see something and jump onto it and want to use it and not really have a view of what the use case or what the audience is for, what the intended audience is. So I think even in my background in education, something that was important for me is it something that's intended for students to be on it if we're putting students on there, because we know we've all seen the wild west of teachers loading kids' names and making fake email addresses and doing whatever they can to create an account to use this, for free. A lot of the time is the focus. And so I really appreciate that conversation and just that idea of, are we using it appropriately? Do we know what the appropriate use case is for that? And we investigated a whole lot at Parent ProTech when we're reviewing different things. Who is the intended audience of this product? Should kids be on it in the first place? And applying safety ratings to all of those things.
When I was in a school district, I cannot stress enough just what Sophia and Christina talked about regarding the curricular relevance. I mean, that's why I would always have the curriculum department sign off on it first before we even put our efforts into vetting things, right? Because if this does not serve learning, we should not be considering it. Now, in Digital Promise, it's a little different because, of course, we also talk about innovation and things, but still understanding that use case and then taking a look at some of those technical things like, can they provide us with their SOC 2s and their certifications? Because that tells us that they've got security practices that they're implementing and continuing to have audited. Accessibility. Oh man, that's a non-negotiable, right? We need to be accessible to all our users. And so, getting a rating or an understanding of that is always helpful. And then, things like single sign-on and multi-factor authentication. We have heard of so many things that have gone off the rails because those things were not put into place, right? And so those are just some of the non-negotiables that we consider, as we talk about that fine line between innovation and maybe trying something, but still being safe about it.
I have to say also, I imagine that many districts have their own data privacy agreements, but it's very important to follow whatever the structure that you have within your organization, whether it's using a national data privacy agreement, like the Student Data Privacy Consortium, or a state requirement, like New York State has EdLaw 2D. There are layers to
Yes.
the selection process. But I think you all pointed out very accurately, it starts with the instructional relevance and the target and benefit for the children in their learning, right? Let's shift a little bit, and I'll start with you with this one, Christina, if I could. Parents are involved in this, and it has to be a bit of a challenge. When and how do we go about involving parents most effectively to make sure that they're aware and they have their opportunity to contribute and they're being supported in this effort?
Yeah, of course. I think something whenever you're approaching parents, either with a new tool or resource or talking about something existing that their kids are already using, the advice that I always give is to tell parents to join that kind of digital world alongside their child. So whether it's getting onto an LMS for the first time and going through and seeing what that workflow looks like, or if they're getting on a game and playing that game, take a couple of times and play a round or two with your child so that you understand exactly what all of the inner functionality of those tools is. Because we can't all know everything about everything, but we can take a moment and kind of pause and say, oh, the school set up this new resource for my kid. They're going to be using it for math or what have you. Let me take 10 minutes and look at it so that I know how to communicate with the teacher, with the school district, and I have my own input and knowledge around it. So that's kind of my running advice whenever you dive in with parents is to say, hey, take 5 minutes and look at it and let us know what you see, that kind of thing.
Great. Other thoughts? Anybody else?
Sophia,
So I
you
used
go.
to think about this concept like a balanced concept. And now that I'm a mom of 2 teens, I'm kind of shifting my thoughts around boundaries, right? Like how are we creating these boundaries that we start as either young children, as teens, because we know that these habits will follow us into adulthood. So I think about having these conversations with our youngers, especially, starting them early. Today I had that great conversation today with the 4-year-old. Later on today, I'm going to have my teens conversation. So really thinking about how are we setting those boundaries for ourselves, but most importantly, what's the purpose? Why are we engaging right now with the screen, with the app? What is the purpose? So those are the two areas that are top of mind for me right now is how am I going to be shifting this conversation from a balanced approach to more of like, how am I setting boundaries that are purposefully driven when I'm interacting in my digital life and my digital world?
Yeah, I love that. The idea of the boundaries and setting up options to use the internet and different tools where they make sense is really important because we're from that old world where, you got to go to the computer lab and that was like you were the most engaged ever that day because you were getting to touch the computer. And now we have these kids that are so engrossed in just screens in general. Like the average teen spends 8.5 hours online in some format every day. That's over a full work day that they're online doing things just for entertainment, for communication, that kind of thing. And so I really do appreciate that idea of making sure that we're choosing tools where they're appropriate. And again, that they're backed by education and by data. And then we're not just throwing kids onto computers to kill time or to keep them quiet because it doesn't work that way anymore. The world has changed around us.
Yeah, sure.
Back in the old days when I was a middle school computer applications teacher, Christina, just like that computer lab that you talked about. But we would hold open houses and we would invite parents to come in with their students, and then their students would get to show their projects, right? This was before they were cloud-based, so they could be shown at home. So they had to come into school. And it was a great dialogue for the parents and the students to talk about a project, and then I'd be around for questions. And so, what does that look like nowadays? And Sophia, I know you've been involved with Verizon Innovative Learning Schools and what that entailed, where if an under-resourced middle school got support from Verizon Innovative Learning Schools, one of the startup features was that there was a kickoff night and parents and students would come to the school and learn about some technology as they were provided with an enabled device that allowed them to be online. And I still reflect on that because it's such a joy-filled time time where parents and students can do something together and they're learning together. And, parents in the old days, we did not grow up with technology, or at least old people like me. And so it's different to see their children grow up with technology in this way. And so it's almost a learning opportunity for parents as much as it is for the students. And I think that's what we need to acknowledge as providers of technology, is that we need to help parents, like Christina said, get them where they're at, but we need to help them learn how to parent with technology in the mix.
Well, and we also, as educators, we need to learn to teach with technology as a part of it as well, right? It's a learning
Most
opportunity all the way
definitely.
around. I love this concept of the triangle and communicating together, because it really sounds like that also lines up with the learning community, figuratively, certainly. So, in order to also facilitate these safe communities, we can block bad content. But how do we also teach good citizenship and help people understand the risks and the opportunities in a healthy fashion? And anybody who wants to start can start on this one.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So on the Parent ProTech platform, we, like I said, have a K-12 digital citizenship curriculum that's aligned with the ISTE standards, specifically those centered around online citizenship, digital safety, media literacy. So we really kind of broke those down into micro strands, and we address them really intentionally and in real world ways using scenarios. For the younger kids, we have storybooks where the teacher reads through the story. We have videos with characters that the students can connect to and kind of see those choices being made in real time, and then pause and have conversations around what was going wrong here or why was this not safe, so that we're working in the younger kids to build that moment of pause when you're seeing something for the first time that feels new or different or maybe even a little uncomfy on a digital space. And then as they get older, we focus more on the permanency of the things that you're doing online. Everything that you post has a trail, and those trails are having more and more impact on people's everyday lives. So we try to have a curriculum that grows alongside the student population and whatever areas they're going to experience the most difficulty when it comes to that. But I really think it is about just building that ability to pause and think before you act online, which is so hard for students who are still, developing.
Great.
Yes. I'm so glad, Christina, that you mentioned the ISTE standards. I've adopted the digital citizenship competencies, the five DigCit, I call them DigCit competencies, thinking about balance, how are we utilizing kind of what I talked about earlier, those boundaries, how are we going to prioritize our time online and in person, making those informed decisions, right now, what is accurate and what is not accurate online, teaching that competency. The other one that I really like is being inclusive of others. We don't always agree with everyone online, but where do we have those opportunities for respect and empathy? And also being engaged. What does it really look like to include families in this process, your community when you're online? What does that look like? How can we use it for good? How can we solve problems? And also my important piece, bringing it back to what we're really talking about today, is how are we being alert? How are we aware of creating some really safe spaces for ourselves and for our community? So these 5 DigCit competencies have really been at the foundation of several initiatives that I've had the great opportunity to lead. Last year was the first year that our district asked everyone from pre-K to 12 to teach one digital citizenship lesson, just one. And because we knew it would open the door to so many more digital citizenship lessons. And then we were able to, in our student information system, have educators mark that they did teach that lesson. And at the end of the school year, we have close to over 500,000 students, close to 300,000 students were marked that they had at least one digital citizenship lesson. Wow, that was just wow. I was just, oh my goodness, so many doors opening for our students. And then for our families as well. Now those conversations are getting started. It's becoming habit of mind. So for me, it's the digital citizenship competencies.
Great. Diane,
Well,
anything?
and the art of discernment. And I think that's exactly what these two are talking about, right? To be able to make judgments. And early on, kids can discern what's right and wrong. But being able to talk through some of these things, and especially if parents are involved, so you can do it together, I think is really important. And so, with the age of AI, deep fakes, information coming through that sounds very credible, but isn't, we need to ramp up all of our powers, our superpowers here. And it sounds like a great framework to follow exactly what Sophia is talking about with the different aspects of digital citizenship. Because when you mention digital citizenship, people go, oh, yeah, what is it? And so being able to help people even understand, that it's helping people be smart online, I think is an important concept.
What's so funny about that is all of us, I'm sure, get emails, and we're all subject to the spam emails. And how much energy have we put into figuring out, is this a real email or not a real email?
Mhm.
And then it gets magnified with AI. It's only growing. So it's so important. I love that expression, learn to discern, is very, very kind of core to this whole concept. But they aren't always going to go right. And how do we build a protocol? How do we build a system that helps us respond if something doesn't go right? And what do we do in terms of transparency and involving of all the stakeholders here? It's not a fun conversation, but it's a conversation that has to happen. It's so vital that we be prepared for. Anybody have thoughts on how we start to build that, or what's kind of top of mind when we build something to support that effort? So, Sophia, you're nodding your head. I'll let you go first.
I think about, what are our, in schools and in districts, what is our plan for cybersecurity education, right? We have the cybersecurity, the IT side, but what are we doing for the education component? I had the privilege of partnering with cyber.org, amazing group of leaders, and with their robust lessons that they've created. So just really thinking about what is our plan on the ground level with our parents, families, and our educators? How are we educating them around cybersecurity? Because, we have digital citizenship over here. We have cybersecurity education over here too. How are we connecting both and not just doing it during a specific month, but how are we threading it through the entire school day, entire school week, entire school year, so that it becomes habit of mind for us. So that way we're being proactive. We don't wait for a big breach to happen. We've already taken steps to try to get ahead of this, and that it's everybody together, from our 4-year-olds to our seniors in high school, that it's not, oh, that's somebody else's problem in IT. No, we are all together. We all have to be on board in our cybersecurity education. So that's where it starts for me.
Diane,
Oh boy. Yeah. Incident response, breach protocols, right? All those things in the IT world, we have a set script for how we manage that. I think that the biggest thing is helping people, like Sophia said, it's everybody in the organization. And so we cannot just say it's an IT thing. They'll take care of it, because everyone needs to be vigilant, and the whole see something, say something. We have within our systems ways to report, suspected phishing emails. We train our people on what to do if they suspect something. The Slack channel is pretty busy about, well, I got this text from our CEO who said, they're in a meeting and I need to get a gift card. And so we build into our onboarding process, right? If you get a text from who's someone who says they're our CEO and they need a gift card, do not do it, right? Gone are the days of the prince from wherever, and people with nefarious intentions are getting a lot smarter. And so trying to stay on top of those things, sharing that information, providing an environment where people are not scared to bring up things like this and share information, I think is really important. And, for school districts, it's having those conversations within schools, with parents and all those things, because, it's really our littles who, if there's a breach, they suffer because their information is released and there's a lifetime of their information being out there. So we all need to be vigilant, and this truly does take a whole village.
Yeah, I would think, Christina, it's a little hard. Parents are not in the day every day. So how do we engage them? How do we make sure they're aware of this?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the areas where things a lot of the time go wrong is that you'll have a group of students using something incorrectly for like the purpose of communicating with each other or what have you, So the old making a document on Google Docs and using it for chatting back and forth with each other because the messaging systems have been disabled and that kind of stuff. So, there are the security breaches and the communicating of all of that and training around that, but we also have kids intentionally doing things because they want to figure out, the loopholes that inadvertently leads to some breakdown or some, unsafe situation. It's an instance of cyberbullying in a Google Doc that now you have to figure out how to track down that data and information. So I think it again ties back to that vigilance of all of us everyone's having eyes on everything that's going on. But also, when you bring parents in on that conversation, and I love how involved Sophia talked about being with educating the parents and making sure that they, have as much information as everyone else. I think it just goes back to being really transparent about the things that are going on, sending messaging out to parents that say, hey, students were using this. Using Google Docs for this. If you see any evidence of that, let us know so we can shut it down, so that they're also putting eyes on those kind of things, because we see a lot of, even in parent connections with us, kind of ominous language around something that happened that you could have said more plainly so parents knew what to look out for, or provided some additional training after the fact to tell them, or messaging after the fact to let them know what to look out for. And it wasn't something that, was at risk of sharing student information or violating FERPA or anything. It was just, hey, keep eyes out for this, while your kids are working, they may actually be chatting or that kind of thing.
It's great. Their parents are sometimes the last to learn about all this stuff, probably. I know I was when I was a parent, and I hope my parents were the last when I was a kid. So that hasn't changed, has it? All right. So we're approaching the end here, but let's take one last run around the horn, and let's look forward. Let's talk a little bit, because the world is changing, and it's changing so rapidly. The introduction of AI it's imminent. It's happening. It's going to happen, whether you believe in it or it's going to happen. So how do we take? I think it's, personally, I think it's an opportunity. But how do we take this and maintain the safe community that we're after as the technology and the footing underneath changes? Who wants to start? Anybody have any immediate thought?
I'll start at the highest levels, organizationally and structurally. I would, and I've been part of one, it seems like forever, I would advise that organizations have a data governance team. That is a complete team who is cross-functional and talks about these things at the highest level, takes a look at policy, takes a look at practices, and really puts some pieces in place, some guidelines and guardrails in place so that people know how to operate. And I think that if it's managed at that upper level with the voices and co-created, that provides, what can I say, some more guidance and transparency regarding expectations as they flow down to the classroom. So that's from, where I sit, but I'm interested in hearing everyone else's.
Yeah.
Just like we did 10, 11 years ago when the first tablets arrived, and now Gen AI has arrived, I think we need to keep those high standards. Like, we know what worked, we know what didn't work, right? So let's remember our lessons learned.
Yes.
keep those high standards. I really appreciate what you shared, Diane, around the policy piece, because sometimes we can't wait for policy. We need to start acting. But at the same time, policy is key because it will provide those guardrails that we have. And my final thoughts is to always look to the experts. Who are those gold star organizations that are already doing the work, that are leading the work? In fact, I think about the work I was able to have with Digital Promise, as well as the Verizon and those Verizon labs. I'm thinking about the work with ISTE. Right now they have the EdTech Index, so that, you don't have to keep reviewing certain applications. You can go to one place and say, oh, this has already been rated. So, let's keep our high standards in this age of AI, and let's continue to look to the experts who are leading this work.
Yeah, and I think that my thoughts around it fall kind of in line with what both of you said. Starting at that high level, developing those policies, those practices, getting that background information, and then using all of that to educate the adults that are in the vicinity of the kids, right? The teachers sharing that information with parents, making sure everyone's in the loop. And if they don't have a direct question right then, that they know how to find the answer, they know who to go to, they know who's on that data governance team, or who's on that safety team to look up, find that information. And then, of course, folding in, I would say, one of our biggest partners across most of our school districts are counselors, and thinking about the safety aspects and the emotional aspects of the impact of all of this. AI, things to come, things we haven't even seen yet on students, because we try really hard to partner with experts. We've partnered with Harvard's top pediatrician that focuses specifically on the impact of media, and several other people. And I think that's a place where we can all be more educated, parents and educators and anyone else in the vicinity of a child. So making sure that we're keeping everyone in the loop on anything that could impact kids.
Great. Any final thoughts? I'll try to summarize what we have here. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
Going off what Sophia said, because she's been a great advocate for ISTE, I want to bring up COSUN as well regarding AI. The Council of Great City Schools, along with COSUN, has created a readiness maturity model. And that has really been helpful to school districts, because it does talk about how to start at the very highest level with data governance, and then how that filters down into, all avenues within a school district. So, between that and Digital Promise and their certifications and things, there are a lot of resources out there. Student Data Privacy Consortium, I leaned on them as a director of technology, as well as things like the Trusted Learning Environment. So there are a lot of resources and a lot of people who know stuff. And so tap your communities, your collaboration partners, thought partners, and everyone to be part of the village.
Great. All right, then. So I think as we look back at the conversation, I captured a couple of thoughts here and I think I'll summarize them a little bit. We started talking about setting the foundation, and really the conversation generated the idea that this is a community, and we have to put our efforts forward to create the safe space for students, but also to prepare teachers for questions they might get and empower parents to engage in this. We have to meet all these stakeholders where they are, make sure we all move forward together. We talked a little bit about selecting resources, and to your point, Diane, there's lots of resources or tools that are available. Digital Promise, the ISTE Seal, but most important here, there are layers, but we have to start with understanding the instructional impact. We have to start with how this is going to help the students and what the actual use case for these tools are, to make sure we're putting the right tool in the right place and that it's safe. So, but starting with instruction first. The whole concept of engaging family is really about building the community. And it is at least a three-way triangle with the educators, the students, and the parents. But it is a learning community that all learns together, both learning about how to use these things and learning about each other's role in the process. Digital citizenship is important to teach the thought, to pause and think, to learn to discern. And what we're really talking about is you have to be conscious about what you're using and how it could be used, how it could be beneficial. Again, it happens on all these layers. When we talk about when things go wrong, we're really saying is you have to be prepared and you have to constantly be vigilant. You have to weave that through all the things that are happening to make sure that you're proactive and you're transparent about it. So if anything happens, you're ready for it. And that just takes a great deal of diligence. And then finally, the framework that we need to have to move forward, we can't sacrifice standards. We can't make any sacrifices, actually. What we have to do is build a framework. We can't wait for a policy. Get a group active. We got a bunch of experts. We got a bunch of people that are interested. Get them engaged, and then adapt the result that you come up with based upon the policy, based upon the real world examples that come back. But it's a continuous process. Did I miss anything? No?
That was a darn good summary.
That was great.
But from the thorn with the 3 roses in this conversation today, I think it was a fabulous discussion. You're all wonderful. I so appreciate you spending the time and sharing your ideas. And to those listening out there, we look forward to joining you next time on the next episode of Perspectives Finding Common Ground.
Thank you for listening. ClassLink is proud to be the meeting place to facilitate these conversations. If you have a topic idea, send it to perspectives@classlink.com. To keep hearing our perspectives, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.